Well,
kind
that's
of
going to
decompress.
cost, is that change, is that reflected in?
That is not currently reflected because that was not part of the original recommendation.
Okay.
I think part of some of the discussion today has now
Seeped into,
it brought the topic back up of if that's still the recommendation to move forward.
It would be basically the dugouts, right?
Right.
Big nail in that thing, which is being clear out those dugouts.
Okay.
Which, again, we could do nothing in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, it would just enable us to have an option.
Have an option,
down the road
yeah.
Versus kind of building a whole new softball facility that's oriented one way, and that we could do nothing else.
Yeah, I agree with you, for sure. I would reorient it. Absolutely.
So, there's also discussion of the land sale and, paper.
Yeah, so the funding aspect, that was one of the, I guess, recommendations here from administration is that land sale could help fund portions of this improvement project. I think originally the plan for the land sale is always to use it in a capital improvement aspect. So that would be the recommendation of us is to use it in that fashion. This just presents basically a coincident opportunity here that this code, they align somewhat in the timing.
Yeah. Because if we didn't have it, how would we pay?
Correct. So it just kind of happened that per the request and the land sale kind of came together at one time. So that's kind of where that kind of idea.
So if we didn't have the land sale, where would this money come from?
This would become from within the capital project account. And normally we fund that account per audit. If we would be so fortunate to have a surplus at the end of the year, the board then gets to look at our fund balance and we can transfer any of that to capital projects. And a lot of that's based off of what we need within the facility request we had earlier with future requests in the 10-year plan to kind of use that money and foresee how much we're going to need in the future. So that's how we've always just kind of funded that pot of money. And there's the next slide will kind of get, 2 slides from now, will kind of get into that topic. No, it's good. We're going to circle back to it, so just know that when I go to explain it, that's kind of some of that thought process behind it. So,
What do you guys think?
I'm kind of somewhat agreeing. I think baseball, softball, the reorientation, and the recovery. And then I think that those are the main things we want to hit when we look to do a feasibility study. And all of the others are things that we're looking to down the road. I don't think that they are a necessity.
I think so. It's nice and great.
so just the, for our note purposes, baseball as presented as a recommendation. And softball, but reorient for option 2. And then scoreboard as a statement. So what we'll do then is we'll work with starting a design plan. Victor and I will work on the design plan, and then we'll come back with some ideas based off initial designs with how the board wants us to do subsequent designs. So we'll have like a first look and say, here's where we think, work with the company to get like a good model of what we expect, and then you guys can tell us from there to kind of design it so we kind of align our ideas together. So that's going to take several months to kind of circle back, but this gives us a good what the pursuit goal is. So just want to make the note at the bottom we kind of alluded to was the track was going to be resurfaced with a fence replacement that was recommended within the product, within the feasibility. That is pinned in at 26, 27, so that'd be next capital project time frame, like next year. And then we also have turf in 27, 28. I'll just note that the turf, that's at the minimum 10-year requirement. Every year, Victor does a test, and that could go longer.
How's it holding up though?
You have a test done.
Yeah, every year we have the GMAX test, and that decides how long you would play on it. When it's deemed unplayable, then you can't
At
play
the
on
bottom
it.
of
It is holding up well. We had a little issue with that one rainstorm, buckled the turf, but I did have the turf company come in and look at it. It did go back down. We did find one hole that they repaired. But other than that, so far it's holding up.
So that's the 10-year mark is 27, 28. So we're anticipating, based off of our usage, we may or may not get some extra years out of it. It's just the first time that they recommended it.
Right. We could take as far as, long test.
So I just want to make note that there are subsequent athletic spaces that were recommended within the feasibility study, just not at this current moment. So we'll just go into the facility grant, I'll just touch on this briefly. So within the grant, we did a competitive grant, and we actually did 2 separate submissions within the grant. So we did one which is high school focused, and the focus of that was to touch the spaces that were not approved within the project. So the biggest of note is the blue gym, is to have that, currently is not air conditioned, to have air conditioning installed in that blue gym, and to have the lower level, which is the shop area, to upgrade their current outdated pneumatic control system. So that's the 2 things within the project, the 2 biggest ones. There's some others like minor things that are in there, but that was the 2 biggest parts. Just remind everybody that the competitive grant was supposed to be funded 75% from the state, 25% from the district. So the other submission was we have end-of-life HVAC units here within the original project here at ACES, and the roof coating. So those are end-of-life, so we also submitted a grant for that. What we're hearing from the grant, some discussion at the state level, is that the grants that they're reviewing are going to be announced, the winners, on October 22nd. But what we're hearing is that instead of being 75-25, that they may reduce the amount that they're contributing, and the district might have to pick up more. Hence why these are in front of you. So if these would be awarded, but awarded at a lesser value, we'll have to circle back to see if they're still feasible to pay, because they're a high dollar figure. At 25%, they're very less burden on the district. It's almost a no-brainer to go 75-25. The state's paying 75. If that would transition to, we'll just say 50-50, that changes the whole dynamic of fundability. And the same thing, if one would get approved and one would get denied, what do we do with the other one? If they both would get denied, there's at least the ACES portion is end of life. It's going to be done regardless. So I just want to be transparent with that we're hanging in the balance from these grants. So we're hopeful that we'll get at least one. If we got both, that would be great. And then what the percentages of contribution from the state will also trigger if these are even feasible anymore. So we're kind of hanging in that balance. So I just want to say that these may come back around pending that October meeting. So just a historical update on capital reserve. Just a note here, the gray line that kind of goes up, that's been our end of year balance within capital projects. The blue is what's been approved, so that's kind of like what's been approved per year. You can see we kind of hang around that $300,000 to $400,000 mark. And the orange is what the board has transferred. So you can see in the middle there's a big $2 million. We did a $2 million transfer of capital reserve last year in anticipation of large ticket items like ACES. Now we're so fortunate that the grant came through. We didn't know at the time, but to help fund those for future years. As you saw, that was almost $3 million for ACES. We gave $2 million now. Right now, it's estimated we may be able to do a $1.5 million transfer in the future to help do that. So right now, we're estimating we'll go somewhere between just right there, just shy of $2.9 million we'll have in that capital reserve balance. It shows up to 4, but if you saw all the projects, that would drop right back down to our typical $1 million mark. So right now, we've historically always prepared 2 to 3 years in advance. We're going to be coming up to that 2 or 3 year mark here at the end of this year to then spend it back down to a normal level. So it's a increase and then right back down. So that's why you see that here. So I just want to be that this is our history. If we would go out the other way, you would see kind of spikes and dips around the stadium project. So I guess we're how we funded it, and then it's going to affect payment. It's very similar to what we're doing with the general fund on the project at the high school. So any questions about the historical capital reserve balance?
No, but I'd like to go back about, I think this has been under the capital project, it's not already, it's not already in the construction project now. And I think maybe Victor can answer it. I was wondering if, so I was standing there looking at the front of the building as it is, and you know that one side's gonna be nice, new, bright, and shiny, and I was looking at the brick and the decorative block, and you can see stains on there. I was wondering if we have anything built into the budget for that, acid wash, that masonry. Okay, it may even look like they started in some place, I don't know, it looks like a big black spot might be gone now, but that's included, you don't have to do that
Yeah,
later.
the entire brick building existing will be washed down with acid. It's in the project.
Okay, great, I didn't remember that, so, I was just thinking, it'd be awful to have a nice, bright, new, shiny building, and then, you know, thank you.
So we'll jump right into Act 1 index. The state issued their Act 1 index, I believe, at the end of last week. So what the state index here off to the left for 25-26, the state Senate index for all school districts is 4%, and the Act 1 index is what the authority of the board can raise taxes at a local level. So the statewide is 4%. On top of that, each district gets their own unique metric, which is called an adjusted index, based off of their metrics. So last year, the metrics were, we were able to go up to, based off of Middletown was 7%. This year, in anticipation, we already kind of foresaw that it would come down. The school board can do up to 5.2%. So as of right now, we realistically would not need to exceed that, so we would just have a resolution on the board meeting, just like we did last year, as early as possible, so this upcoming meeting to have not to exceed a 5.2%. So if there's any questions on that, feel free to ask. I can explain some of the Act 1 stuff, but that's pretty much just the opportunity for the board, and that puts a ceiling on without doing an additional referendums and stuff through the state to be approved, and some subsequent stuff. That's what our ceiling would be. And then some historical is the next piece into the chart. So historically, if you see the blue at the bottom is the state, what the state has indexed, and you can see last year's 5.3, and this year's 4%. The red is our adjusted, and you can see we've that follows based off our metrics. It's been pretty similar, follows pretty in tandem. And then the green is what reality of the board has set as a tax increase. So you can see we've been spiking here, and then this is the most recent 1% that was approved in June. So that's just our history here for the past about 10 years.
About 10 years.
Yeah. I have a 20, that's why I said 20. So any question on just our historical here at Middletown or how Act 1 works? So then we'll jump down to the food service spend down plan. So just the old board, we talked about this, or so the old committee, we talked about this last year. Per requirements, the district only allowed to keep the 3 months extra, or 3 months carryover year to year for food service. So I said that's why the state requirements in there. If there is more than 3 months worth of spend down, then we are required to have a plan in place. Now, the most recent plan, what was discussed, is purchasing food service equipment to have a new equipment within the whole project, because a lot of the equipment was to be deemed reused. So the whole board, whole committee said that that's what they wanted, and that was the plan for last year. At that time, the project was not very processed, so we were in anticipation of that. So we had it as anticipation of the project, and this was our anticipated plan, and that was accepted. Now the project's approved. Victor and I worked through, and we had a quote, and we quoted what the equipment would be for the spend down. So you can see here that the spend down plan that I would propose here would be to buy new equipment at both ACES and the high school. So the high school would be outfitted with new equipment through the project and through food service account. And ACES would be able to get a couple new equipment items that are close to end of life. We would also get new dining areas for tables and chairs for student dining. Within that is going to be a request to hire a food service coordinator. So this came about with our most recent audit. It became apparent that there are a lot of requirements for state and federal compliance, that we need a designated person to monitor all the time. So this is a request that to be able to hire a food service coordinator that would be able to be funded by the food service account. And they would oversee the food service management company. So they would be basically overseeing their compliance aspect and do all the reporting for the district. They'd be the district representative on behalf of the food service account. So right now, it's currently split between myself and one of my administrative assistants. And we kind of tag team that. And between our other duties, sometimes we don't have the amount of time that we would like to designate to food service aid. So this person would be able to spend all their time designated to food service. And some of the cost would be offset, so it's not a full 100%. So right now, currently, we've had some transitions happen within the food service department where we've had internal people who have left our employment and now transitioned to food service management company, or some have retired or resigned from their positions. What happens is when somebody moves from internal to contracted, a lot of times that saves some money. So that cost that we originally anticipated as being internal would then has now shifted to food service management company, which then leaves that internal. So it's kind of a even exchange, not even exchange, but an even offset between what was originally internal to food service to have this coordinator come in. So that's some of the requests there. And we would also, this most recent year, we held student meal costs. What was proposed was to increase them, I believe, by 15 cents. And with the excess of funds within the food service account, we thought that there was no need to increase costs, so we held those stagnant. I believe those costs have been stagnant for at least 2 to 3 years. I don't remember the last time we did increase them, but they would be in anticipation to continue to hold them as financially viable. Just keep those basically frozen, like I said, until we deem it necessary that we have to increase prices. So that's kind of the spend down plan. The bulk of it would be used for buying all new equipment to expand our food service program here. It would hire a coordinator who would also expand the food service program, be able to designate and enhance it, and grow that program under the food service management company. And then the next slide, within the RFP process, they would also be able to work in tandem with, if there was a potential new food service management company, this person would help oversee that new company and have them basically boots on the ground, help them transition easier.
So I have a question.
Yep.
About the food service coordinator. Aren't we providing a food service coordinator by Chartwell's?
That's a director of dining services, and within the state, we are required to have somebody report and maintain compliance on them. They only are able to run the day-to-day operations. We have to then submit all the reports. We have to monitor their compliance with USDA and state guidance. We have to oversee their program. So yes, they do have a person who oversees, we'll shoot Chartwell's here, they have somebody who oversees their ordering and menu planning and their employees, but we have to have somebody monitor them because they can't submit everything, and unless we're maintaining them, maintain compliance, there's nobody to hold them accountable.
And what's the requirement, Tom, for that person or that position to hold the cafeteria Chartwell's compliant? What's the requirement on our end?
So we have to have a designated person. Currently, it's myself, is the named person. And like I said, my responsibilities are across a lot of different departments, and my time can't always be spent to maintain compliance with solely food service management company. I'm trying to compliance for the whole district. So I felt the need that within the audit process this past year of our food service program, that this was a necessary person to be hired.
And what's the expected cost?
This would fall in line with a current district office administrative assistant. So depending on their experience, this would range, I don't have a salary and benefits at the moment. It's more or less a request and then be able to have that subsequently, but it would more or less be, I believe it's, I'll have to pull those support staff compensation agreement that was approved. So I would honestly, no, that has to be calculated. So I honestly don't have, I can circle back on Monday.
And then, so say that we go a few years in the future and we don't have the surplus that we're having in the food service, then is that going to come out of the budget? Or do we get rid of the person? Or like, how does that work?
Well, the whole process of a food service account is to make it net